Hey Big Bulls, welcome back to the fourth episode of Bullseye. Today we have three very interesting stories for you.
We're going to talk about Vodafone Idea shares big win. We talk about HUL's sweet move to splitting its ice cream business. And we also talk about this MSCI rejig and should you care about it.
So Saloni, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say Vodafone Idea?
That the rebranding to V did not quite catch up on, and also the bad network. That's quite the complaint that they have.
Yeah, the other word that comes to my mind is struggle, because that's what the Vodafone UK plus Idea Cellular merger that happened has been facing actually since Reliance's Jio came into the picture in 2016. They came in with dirt cheap pricing, and since then, Vodafone Idea or V is just trying to stay afloat. But this week, in the past few days, Vodafone Idea shares have jumped by nearly 25%.
So did they win something big there?
Well, let me rewind a little and tell you a little bit of a telecom backstory, right? The world of telecom is not an easy place to be in. It's a fairly expensive affair. If I break it down, there are three main components here, right? First, there is the spectrum or the auction fees that a lot of telcos have to pay. They have to pay this to the government just to get the rights to transmit data and voice over the airwaves. Apart from this, there's also a yearly license fee. This is kind of like a cut that the government takes from the revenues that a telco makes every year. And then not to forget that it's a continuous affair because you have 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, it's ever evolving. So there's a lot of upgradation and tower cost and everything that comes in a telecom business.
So that needs a lot of money then.
It does. A lot of borrowing from banks is involved, and we did that too. But when Jio came in and the tariff wars began, you mentioned the patchy network, right?
Yeah.
Vodafone Idea had probably one of the most patchiest networks. So they lost millions of subscribers. Subscribers left them by the truckloads. And then there was also another problem where telecom operators such as we had gone to the Supreme Court and asked the Supreme Court to kind of go back and recalculate these adjusted gross revenues, what I said, the license fees. But that plea actually fell on deaf ears. It did not help, and the Supreme Court said no. And the end result was in 2019, we actually owed 50,000 crore rupees in dues, which was probably one of the highest in the telecom industry. Now, cut to 2024, somehow the telecom company has managed to stay afloat. Yes, they have lost subscribers from 30 crores to just 20 crore subscribers today, but they managed to buy some time for themselves. They went and announced a 45,000 crore rupees fundraise this year, which would be a mix of equity and debt. So they managed to stay afloat by selling more shares and also by borrowing money from banks.
So what about this week? What happened?
Well, the big news this week that has driven this penny stock higher is something about a bank guarantee waiver from spectrum auctions prior to 2022. Now, basically, this guarantee was in place because the government said, hey, listen, you're buying spectrum from us, but we need a bank to kind of back it up. The bank should come in and say, hey, if something goes wrong, I will come in and open up our purse strings, right? And if this waiver actually happens, it's a big deal for we. And the reason why it's a big deal is because banks won't be on the hook for the past dues of we now. It's a waiver from 2022 and prior to that, right? So banks will not be on the hook, and we will actually have the ability to go back to banks now and say, hey, listen, you're not on the hook anymore. So can you lend even more money to me, right? And using that money, we can just focus on their business. They don't need to worry about anything else. They can focus on raising funds for their networks, their 5G. They don't need to worry about payments. And we actually has 2.1 lakh crore rupees stuck in dues. So it's going to be a big relief to help it improve its finances.
And after all, it is too big to fail with 20 crore subscribers, I guess.
It seems so. So Saloni, let's talk about HUL's sweet split.
Right. So here's what happened. Hindustan Unilever decided to demerge its ice cream business, better known for those quality walls ice cream that we keep having, right? And now that ice cream business is going to be a separate listed entity.
Oh, wow. I love those red and white trucks that come trundling down the road always. But why is HUL actually splitting quality walls off?
Right. So for any company, when they grow, they need to diversify to expand, right? And when they get into too many industries, that's when managing it all becomes tough. And the stock also does not reflect the true value of each and every unit. And that is called the conglomerate curse, right? That's when demerging works because it lets the units grow each on their own and also adds value for shareholders. The goal of the demerger is also to create, focused companies with clear strategies, better management and also more profit.
No.
It also makes it easier for investors to value each company and also gives the parent company that long-term worth, right? And that's why HUL is also demerging, obviously to create that fair value. And in their words, they have said that the demerger of the ice cream business will create a leading listed ice cream company in India, which will have a focused management with greater flexibility. Now, here's the thing. It's ice cream brands like Quality Walls, Magnum and Cornetto. They have had sales of around rupees 2,000 crores. And they're one of the most popular ice cream brands in India, right?
Yeah.
But unlike HUL's dominance in the home and personal care, when it comes to the ice cream market, it's lagging behind Amul, and it's also competing with our brands like Mother Dairy and Vadilal. They even partnered with Vijaykan Dairy in 2018 to buy the ice cream business, including the Aditya Milk brand. This was to expand their presence and also beat the competition, right? But then also the ice cream business is just about 3% of HUL's total revenue.
That's interesting. So which means spinning this off is now finally going to give the Quality Walls brand and its business the focus it deserves, right?
It does, but as for the company being a pure play listed ice cream business, that's rare because in India, Vadilal is the only competition there that they have, right? And the company will also need to tackle seasonal sales, tough competition, and also the demand that we've seen for healthier options. But shareholders do get the advantage from this fair share exchange that's going to happen once the demerger is approved. But wait, there's one more specific reason why HUL decided to spin off its ice cream business. It's because its parent company, Unilever, decided to sell off the ice cream business earlier this year. So HUL will have to just follow the footsteps locally.
That's interesting. But at least we have another ice cream player on the block there.
True, that's true.
So let's talk about the third story, Saloni, which is the episode of the MSCI rejig. Because every now and then we see headlines saying MSCI's rejig of Indian stocks, everyone gets excited, prices soar, sentiments rise. But what is this actually about and why should people like you and me care about it?
So MSCI is a global index provider and they have tons of indices, right? They have MSCI Global Index, which consists of global stocks. They have this emerging markets index that consists of stocks from developing countries. They even have this country-specific indices, for example, MSCI India Index that consists Indian stocks, just like, Nifty and Sensex. The rebalancing happens when MSCI plans to tweak the indices by adding or removing stocks, changing the weights of the stocks, and also moving them between categories, be it like from emerging markets to developed markets or from small cap to mid cap. It's their way of keeping things aligned with the market and the stocks that will actually fall in the eligibility criteria of their indices, right? These indices are actually the go-to benchmarks or the standard point of reference for investors, funds, and even ETFs around the world.
So by ETFs, you mean these exchange-traded funds, which basically just track an index, right? And it allows you to buy a mix of the assets that can be traded like you would trade a stock on the stock exchange.
Sure.
Right. All right. So what changes actually now after this rebalancing that we are hearing about?
So MSCI updates these indices every now and then, but the major rejig happens during May and November. Stocks that rise in value generally get a bigger weight and the ones that fall get like a smaller weight. And being added to an index usually increases the demand because institutional investors who mirror these indices, they have to buy those stocks, right? And this pushes the stock prices up and also the expectations of passive flows that these additions would bring also creates its sentiment soaring that you mentioned.
Okay, hold on. What do you mean by passive flows here?
Right. So when a stock is added in the index, passive funds that track it automatically will have to adjust their indices as well, right? To mirror the MSCI index. And these are called passive flows because investment is done based on the index changes and the fund manager is not actively investing in them, right? And that is why it's called passive flows. For example, the November rejig is seen to bring around 2.5 billion of passive flow in Indian equities. Oh. And we saw HDFC Bank being in the spotlight because of its weight going to go up in the index. And that also pushed its shares to 1800 on Monday.
Wow, which means more FII inflows coming into the country.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So I guess that's it from us this week, Saloni. We have talked about Vodafone Idea and its shares soaring. We have talked about the sweet business demerger of the ice cream business from HUL. And we have also spoken about this MSCI rejig that's gotten everyone excited. And that's it from us this week, folks. We'll catch you same time next week for yet another cracking episode of Bullseye.